The $5 date. Sometimes the smallest moments carry the greatest weight, and sometimes kindness arrives exactly when we've stopped expecting it. The restaurant was called Augustine's, and it had been there on Maple Street for 37 years. Claire Matheson knew this because her mother used to bring her here on special occasions when she was a girl. The white tablecloths were still pristine, the wall sconces still glowed with that same warm amber light, and the burgundy curtains still framed the tall windows overlooking the street. She sat at a small table near the window, her phone face down beside her water glass, and tried to calm the nervous flutter in her chest. Claire was 28 years old, with honey blonde hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore a cream-colored dress, simple, modest, the kind that made her feel put together without trying too hard. Her blue eyes kept darting toward the door, then away again, as if looking too eager might somehow jinx the whole evening. This was her first blind date in 3 years. Her friend Monica had set it up. "You need to get out there again, Claire," she'd said over coffee last week. "You can't keep saying no to life just because things didn't work out before." And Monica was right. Claire knew she was right. But knowing something and feeling ready for it are two different things entirely. She glanced at her small purse resting on the chair beside her. Inside was her wallet, and inside her wallet was a $5 bill, 2 singles and some loose change. That was it. That was all she had until Friday, when her paycheck would finally clear. The past 6 months had been difficult. Her hours at the bookstore had been cut back, and medical bills from her father's hospital stay last winter had drained what little savings she'd managed to build. She'd been eating simple meals at home, pasta, eggs, toast, and taking the bus instead of driving to save on gas. But Monica had been so insistent. And somewhere deep inside, Claire had wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, something good could still happen. That maybe she deserved one evening of normalcy, of hope, of possibility. She'd agreed to meet him here at 7. His name was Derek. Monica said he worked in marketing and had a good sense of humor. That was about all Claire knew. It was now 7:15. She took a sip of water and told herself not to panic. Traffic could be bad. Parking could be hard to find. There were a dozen reasonable explanations. At 7:30, the waiter approached again, polite but clearly waiting for her to order something or leave. "Just a few more minutes," Claire said softly. "I'm sure he's on his way." The waiter nodded and moved on. Claire looked down at her hands. Her grandmother's ring caught the candlelight, a small silver band with a tiny opal. It was the one valuable thing she owned, and she never took it off. It reminded her that her grandmother had faced hard times too, and had come through them with grace. At 7:45, her phone finally buzzed. She picked it up quickly, hope rising in her chest. The message was short. "Sorry, can't make it." Something came up. That was all. No explanation. No apology beyond those few words, nothing. Claire set the phone down carefully as if it were made of glass. She felt heat rising to her cheeks, not anger exactly, but embarrassment, disappointment, a familiar ache of feeling foolish for hoping. She signaled the waiter. "Just the house salad, please," she said quietly. "And water is fine." The salad was $6 on the menu. She'd checked earlier. If she left a $1 tip, that would be exactly $7. She could cover it. She wouldn't leave hungry and empty-handed. She would sit here, eat her salad with dignity, and then go home. And tomorrow life would go on the way it always did. At the table across from hers near the far wall sat a man who had been watching. His name was James Holloway, and he was 43 years old. He had neat brown hair just starting to gray at the temples, a strong jawline, and the kind of quiet, thoughtful presence that made people feel safe without quite knowing why. He wore a dark gray suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone, an attempt to look less formal, less intimidating. He'd come here tonight to think. James was the CEO of a logistics company his father had started decades ago. It was successful, stable, the kind of business that didn't make headlines but employed 200 people and kept families fed. He was good at his job. He understood numbers, systems, how to make things run smoothly. But lately he'd been feeling the weight of it all. His wife had passed away 4 years ago after a long illness. She'd been the light in his life, the one who made him laugh, who reminded him not to take everything so seriously. Since then, he'd been raising their daughter alone, Emma, who was now 12 and growing up faster than he could believe. He'd thrown himself into work, into being a good father, into all the responsibilities that filled his days. But somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how to simply sit and breathe. So tonight, he'd left Emma with his sister and come here alone to have a quiet dinner and remember what it felt like to be still. He'd ordered the salmon, barely touched it, and spent most of the hour watching the people around him. The elderly couple by the fireplace who still held hands between courses. The business associates discussing contracts with two loud voices. And the young woman by the window sitting by herself, checking her phone with increasing worry. James had noticed her the moment she walked in. There was something about her, a gentleness, a quiet vulnerability that reminded him of his late wife. Not in appearance, but in the way she carried herself, as if she'd been hurt before and was trying very hard to believe in something good anyway. He'd watched her wait, watched her hope, watched her face fall when she read whatever message had come through, and when she ordered only a salad and water, something clicked into place in his mind. He knew that look. He'd seen it before in his own employees, in parents at Emma's school, in strangers at the grocery store. It was the look of someone holding on, doing their best, trying to maintain dignity when life had worn them down to the edges. James signaled his waiter, a young man named Peter who'd served him many times before. "Peter," James said quietly. "The woman at the table by the window. I'd like to take care of her." "Bill." Discreetly. "And please tell the kitchen to prepare whatever she'd like. Anything on the menu. Tell her it's already been paid for." Peter blinked in surprise, then smiled. "Of course, Mr. Holloway. And Peter, don't tell her who paid. Just say someone wanted to help." Peter nodded and walked toward Claire's table. Claire had just taken her first bite of salad when the waiter returned. "Excuse me, miss," Peter said gently. "Your meal has been taken care of. And if you'd like to order something more, an entree, dessert, anything at all, it's been covered." Claire looked up, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your dinner's been paid for, by another guest. They wanted to remain anonymous, but they insisted you should have whatever you'd like." Claire's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She looked around the restaurant, trying to understand. "I don't... Why would someone..." Peter smiled kindly. "Sometimes people just want to do something nice. No strings attached. Can I bring you a menu?" Claire felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them back quickly. Yes, please." When Peter returned with the menu, Claire's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. She hadn't had a real meal, a proper restaurant meal, in months. She looked at the options, feeling almost guilty for even considering them. But then she thought of her grandmother, who used to tell her, "When life offers you a gift, child, accept it with grace." "The chicken marsala," Claire said softly. "Please." "Excellent choice," Peter said. "And to drink?" "Just water is wonderful." "Thank you." As Peter walked away, Claire looked around the restaurant again. She wanted to know who had done this, wanted to thank them. But every table seemed occupied with their own conversations, their own lives. No one looked her way. Whoever it was, they had given her more than a meal. They had given her a moment of belief that kindness still existed, that people still looked out for one another, that maybe the world wasn't as cold as it sometimes seemed. James watched from his table as Claire's dinner arrived. He saw her face light up when the plate was set, before her, not with greed or entitlement, but with genuine gratitude. She closed her eyes for just a moment, and he thought she might be saying a silent prayer of thanks. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. There was no hurry in her movements, no phone checking, no distraction, just presence, just appreciation. Emma would like her, James thought suddenly. His daughter had a good sense for people, could tell within minutes whether someone was genuine or not. And this woman, Claire, he'd heard Peter call her, seemed as genuine as they came. When Claire finished her meal, Peter brought the check folder, empty except for a small note. James had written, "You deserve more than just dinner. I hope things get better. A friend." James watched as Claire read it. watched as she pressed her hand to her mouth, her eyes glistening. She folded the note carefully and placed it in her purse, then sat for a long moment just breathing. When she finally stood to leave, James looked down at his plate, not wanting to be caught watching. But as Claire walked past his table toward the door, she paused. James looked up. She was standing just a few feet away, her purse over her shoulder, her eyes meeting his. "I don't know if it was you," Claire said quietly, her voice steady despite the emotion there. "But if it was, thank you. You have no idea what tonight meant to me." James smiled, a small genuine smile. "Sometimes we all need someone to remind us we're not alone." Claire nodded, blinking back tears. "Your wife is very lucky." James's smile turned bittersweet. "She was, but she passed away a few years ago." "I'm so sorry," Claire said, and the compassion in her voice was real. "Thank you," James said. "I have a daughter. She's 12. She keeps me going. I'm sure you're a wonderful father." "I try to be." They stood there for a moment. Two strangers who had somehow seen each other across a crowded room. "I'm Claire," she said finally. "James." "Well, James, thank you. Truly." "You're welcome, Claire." She turned to leave, then paused again. Maybe I'll see you here again sometime." James nodded. "I'd like that." And then she was gone, walking out into the night, her steps a little lighter than when she'd arrived. James sat alone at his table for a while longer, thinking about kindness, about connection, about how small gestures can carry enormous weight. He thought about his wife, who had always believed in helping people quietly, without fanfare. She would have liked what he'd done tonight. And he thought about Emma waiting at home, probably reading in bed with the lamp on past her bedtime. When he finally left the restaurant, James felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, not the desperate, grasping kind, but the quiet kind, the kind that whispers that maybe, just maybe, good things are still possible, that maybe life still holds surprises, that maybe we find each other exactly when we're meant to. He drove home through familiar streets, the city lights blurring past his windows, and thought about Claire, about her grace, her resilience, the way she'd accepted kindness without demanding to know why. He didn't know if he'd see her again, but something told him he would, because sometimes the universe has a way of bringing the right people together at exactly the right time. And sometimes all it takes is $5, a moment of noticing, and the courage to be kind. If this story touched your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about life, love, and the quiet moments that change us. And please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about a time when someone's kindness made all the difference in your life. Thank you for listening, and remember, you never know when your small act of kindness might be someone else's answered prayer.